Hey,
Hello. Um, Chatting with a couple other people who are probably not going to be able to join. But even if it's the two of us, maybe we'll make some good use of our time. Thank you for Mike. Thank you for filling out the evaluation. I appreciate it.
sure. I find if I don't do things when they first come in, they don't get done.
Yeah. Everybody else, I'm pretty much having to go one-on-one and remind them in person. So, first of all, while I have you here, I have a rough draft of the summary that I put together from the workshop. I just chatted it into the Hangout here. And so you may be interested in taking a look. Basically, my objective here is to make like a relatively readable, navigable document that generally sums up the workshop, both for people who were there and need to report back to their people, to our funders, and also as like a marker in our process. Oh, you just joined again.
Yeah, this is on my iPad. Let's see if I can get them. Although my computer doesn't have a camera, you just said you put something in the.
Oh, have
Put
you?
something in.
Yeah. Do you see the Google Hangout chat bar?
No, not on my iPad. All I see is you. So
Okay.
That's why I'm going to the.
All right. No worries. You added the Hangout toolbox. What is this going to do? Oh, snap. Comment tracker. I don't know what that means. Let's see. Nope. Whoa. Volume control, comment tracker, applications. Okay.
I don't see anything.
All right, I'm going back to chat. Are you on you're on your computer now? Try this.
Well, I'm on both.
Yeah, do you see that in the group chat on your computer?
There's chat, one message. There it is. Okay, I got it now.
All right. So our notes document our raw notes document is a little overwhelming. As I was trying to make a summary, this document also became overwhelming. So I've actually done a summary within a summary. There's a table of contents and then an executive summary that basically just puts it all into one page. And then from there, I sort of walk through the methodologies behind the workshop. Oh, this isn't going to work.
That's really spooky.
Yeah, that's not going to work. Let's see here. It also looks like Dale may be viewing our thing but not participating. So let me see if, while you take a look at that, let me see if I can get Dale on the line, because it would be great to have him here while I debrief with you. Oh, it's Chris who's watching. Okay. Hi, Chris. Let me see if Dale is. It's just a couple of us. As I mentioned in email, a lot of people are either on vacation or have just been digging out from being at the workshop and were too busy for me to sort of put them on the hook for this. And Sophia is ill, so the work group hasn't been really catching up on their work. So while we're in this sort of lull, you and I can just sort of debrief a little bit from the workshop, talk about the summary and what it, how we're producing it. And I'm also just, you gave us some great feedback on the workshop, on the evaluation, the survey. But if there's anything that you wanted to follow up on, whether about the process or really about like action plans moving forward, and something that I can check in with you about, like what's going to happen in Alameda moving forward, I'd be happy to see what's on your mind.
Well, my one question that I still have that I wasn't clear about at the workshop is, we're doing these pilots, and my assumption is, I guess the pilots are going to implement something that's going to serve the data model. But it wasn't all clear what the scope of those projects should be. I mean, you know, there's a global data model, and you could implement something that serves that data, but there didn't seem to be any direction as to what data they ought to be serving. I mean, I sort of have a feeling I know what it is, but you know, for Alameda County, I would assume that they would try and collect all the data they could find from Alameda County from existing online services and somehow serve that data. But there's never, you know, there's not a definition of that. Maybe that needs to be something that happens as the pilot groups go forward.
Yeah, you know, to an extent, we have been leaving this. We, as in like myself and my co-designers, you know, the people facilitating this process, we've intentionally left that a little undefined, because there's a lot of different ways I think that these projects could evolve, and they're all going to. Any successful evolution of a local pilot is just going to be reflecting the circumstances of the landscape in that community. So I think there are parameters. There's like a framework for how we think a pilot should work that we're proposing. But in terms of the specific courses of action, we wouldn't go so far as that. But we would just be there to advise and support. You know, I think we can anticipate some directions based on the institutions and interests in the room. In Alameda specifically, you have Eden INR, which I think has some interest in upgrading its system generally, in finding new ways of reducing costs or new ways of gaining revenue. You know, so I think there's now the phase of exploring, given the particular interests of individual institutional stakeholders, and also our sort of identified collective interest, where are the alignments? Where are the projects that could actually do something very specific that is valuable to the people who are doing it in and of itself, while moving us towards our general goal? So for instance, we have interest from county agencies in making data about their services and services that are contracted by them available in this format. One simple project could be, as they're doing that work to make information about services available in our format, the different organizations that collect information, First Five, Eden INR, could figure out how they are going to consume it in that format. In the meantime, then you have other projects like the hospitals or these other, you know, there's like the victims advocacy team. Dion was there in the room, and they want to develop an application. And so there are, around those possible actions, there are other little projects, and we can sort of explore which ones actually can be practiced, can be experimented with at this point in time. And ultimately, it's not like everyone has to make one decision. We want to support at least a couple of concrete actions to move forward. And there can be other things that people try to do and experiment with and tell us how it works. Alongside these sort of like short-term, near-term specific objectives, I think there's also a broader conversation that happens among all the stakeholders who want to be a part of it, looking ahead down the road, right? So there's short-term action steps that can be taken while having a longer-term conversation about where is it that we want to go and how do we think we should get there. bringing up some of those conversations about governance and that sort of thing. But ultimately, that conversation really should be informed by things that people try to do and as they figure out what works. So I know that that's like a pretty non-specific answer, and I'd be happy to brainstorm specifics with you. But before saying any more, how does that sound?
I guess what I heard, the pilot project could be anything from some organization just providing data in that format, to a group implementing a system that collects data and provides it in that format. Is that am I hearing right, or am I just maybe I zoned out a little there?
Well, right. There are organizations that currently collect this data, and they all have probably strengths and probably areas of their domain that they would want to improve. And so they have their own particular objectives, which could be met in various ways. And then I think there are some institutions and community groups in Alameda who want to be able to consume this data.
Right.
And so the challenge is, obviously, in the near term, we're not going to have 100% quality data really ever. And in the near term, we're also probably not even going to have like data that we feel great about using, just because it's all in different forms, and it's going to take some time for us to learn how to get it into a form that's really like plug and play, right? In a way that you'd be ready to get anyone off the street to start using it reliably. So we have to balance the prerogative to really learn and to experiment and learn with the need to be able to do it responsibly. So that suggests to me that it's really not necessarily about trying to do all these different things at once or act collectively at once, but trying to find a couple of projects where there's capacity and some sort of responsible setting in which we can do these experiments, essentially. Mm-hmm. Did that answer your question?
I think so. Basically, you're looking for anyone who will do something with the standard as a test. Mm-hmm. I know that's a little glib, but
no, that's exactly it. It's like, take this model, try to get data from point A to point B. We're not going to tell you how much data or anything like that. We can provide some guidance. We can connect you to resources, in terms of technologists or city or county government people. We can help facilitate conversations, but it's really up to the sort of interests, resources, and also constraints of the people on the ground to determine what the particular action course is. Mm-hmm. And again, what we can offer in that is some measure of facilitation and project coordination, right? Mm-hmm. Coordinating meetings, setting agendas, taking minutes, asking clarifying questions, suggesting that we table questions that maybe aren't so clarifying, right, or that we're not ready to answer yet. We can help with that process, and I think we're still looking for low-hanging fruit. Mm-hmm. I think that a low-hanging fruit is a city or county government saying, which we're starting to see this in Alameda, saying we want to make information about our services available. That's really clear and easy if they're making it available in a common format, and we can demonstrate that E9R, First Five, can both consume it into their systems. That's great. If we can find some other use, like some new basic prototype application that we could hack up at a hackathon to use that data alongside E9R and First Five, for example.
A simple client.
Yeah. Yeah. That's even better. So it's sort of it's going to be this process of figuring out, okay, where are the resources, where are the needs, and what do we think can actually get done in the next 3 months, in the next 6 months. And the one thing that I haven't done in this summary so far is go through that roadmap. I've been leaving that to the end.
So let me circle back to my confusion of the workshop. we spend a lot of time on discussing things like data validation, distributed updates, all this stuff that would be of interest if you were building a storage system for this data. But it seems that that's something that's way down the road, and in the short term, there are going to be pilots that are going to be building compatible interfaces to the standard, right? Is that?
Yeah, I don't know how far down the road it is. It's definitely not the next thing that we do, right? Building the distributed system, building the means of validating data from distributed sources is not necessarily the next thing that we do. But if we have multiple governments, for example, saying, okay, we want to provide data that we're producing in this format, we're very quickly going to have to develop something approaching that, or tools that may be useful in that process for those governments, right? Because they may have different ways to make data about their sources available, and so they, even within that network of government agencies, they're going to need the means of validating, of sort of parsing from different sources in order to get clean data that they feel good about producing to the public. So, and that's for example, something that actually Code for America, that's part of its core competency, right? Code for America doesn't necessarily, like, at least the brigades are sort of a volunteer network, which is great. But Code for America proper, they develop products for government. And so that's actually an objective that they can, and I believe will, take on. And so the question is, as that work is happening, how can we take on other pieces that might benefit from it and move us a little bit closer?
America is going to put up a development group to make some sort of data server for this? Is that the... Well,
I guess there is the Ohana product, which is currently just a means of exposing data, right? And so Alameda Healthcare Services Agency, for example, we're going to talk to them this afternoon, they're saying we're interested in making data about our services available. So Ohana can expose, they can deploy Ohana, expose the, Alameda Healthcare Services Agency services and contracted services through that. But they're also going to need the means of producing that data, and that's something that the Ohana team, the Code for America capacity, can help do. And
I forgot Ohana for a minute.
Yeah, well,
moving parts.
Yeah, moving parts.
All right.
So yeah, I mean, ideally, this work can happen along a few different arcs. There's an arc of, like, the institutional leadership and the people who are stepping up to drive, quote unquote, are able to sort of gather regularly and plot, this is what it is we want to do this month, this is where we want to be in 3 months or in 6 months or whatever it is. And then there's also the weekly brigade meetings, Open Oakland, fairly regular hackathons. Those are all, I'm realistic about what can get done at those evenings, but I think I'm different from many others in that I actually think something can get done, right? Like if you bring a well-scoped, contextualized, like, set of tasks or even individual task to those hack nights, and you have someone there who's able to say, this is what we want to do and why, and I think there really is a lot of talent that comes through those evenings. That can be,
but I think my observation from working on the Open Disclosure Project is you need a really good project manager who's there all the time. Because my observation is that generally not a lot happens between the hour and a half that we're there in the room coding. And then, sort of no one keeping track of, what needs to get done, what we need to do to finish, when we will be finished. So it's
you
can't just have someone who wants to get it done. You have to have someone who wants to manage it.
Yeah, and I think that's a near-term prerogative, and we have we have a few options for how that capacity can be allocated, and I think one of those options is also ask for funding from some of these institutions in East Bay that want to see it happen to actually hire someone into a capacity. If anybody who's already currently hired doesn't feel like, if we don't have anybody who's currently in the position like Samir, who's doing product, sort of product development, which is related but not necessarily project management. So if we, over the next couple of weeks, identify, hey, that's a capacity that we need to fill, that's one of our next objectives in the coming months, is to say we need a project manager to be able to drive the different moving pieces of the Alameda pilot forward so that we can take advantage of these volunteer resources, these institutional resources, and so on.
So I started out some questions about the state of the data model.
Sure. Have you taken a look at it?
Oh yeah, I took a look. I read it, and I have a bunch of comments that I put into the doc.
Yeah.
My overall, what state is it in? I mean, where do you think it is in the process?
So, as I understand it, and this is partially why I think it's just you and I on this call, is because Sophia was sick over the last 4 days. It turns out she'd had an infection that she was fighting through during the workshop. So things have been a little delayed, but the idea is that we had an initial comment period starting late last month. So we've got an initial wave of comments. The work group was all there during the workshop, and they gathered after the workshop to hash through there's like one big issue that they've surfaced around which there's some disagreement, or at least there's some divergence. And so they've started hashing through that, and I think Sophia is in the process of synthesizing all that input, coming out with like a set of proposed changes, a set of changes that have been proposed but she's not necessarily accepting, and then also a set of changes that were proposed that she's going to be like, this is not in our scope, or whatever it is at this point in time. So I'm expecting that within the next week, and then we're going to have another request for comment period that we're going to push a little harder, of like, okay, we're in our last phase of this cycle, of this part of the cycle, and so we'll get another round of comments. The work group will convene at least once, but I'm assuming twice, if not 3 times, to say, okay, boom, 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 down the list. If there's not disagreement, they're going to be documenting what the disagreement was and saying this is how we want to test, whether this works or not, this decision we're making. And so I'm hoping that by mid-August, they come out and say, at the latest, I would hope it's early August, they come out and say, okay, this is our final specification, and we're going to set it for the next. It looks like people are thinking 6 months. Some wanted a year for us to like set it for a year and walk away. I was originally proposing 3 months, and people told me that was too short for people to really be developing around. And so I think that's still a little bit open-ended of whether it's 6 months or a year that we'll be stepping away from it. Yeah, and then we go off and we build with it. Right.
So one global comment. Well, there's probably several, but the thing that bothers me the most about where it is, and I didn't put a comment in because I'm not sure. I'm still trying to get up to speed exactly what this means. But the definition in the appendix, which seems for a standard seems a strange place to put all the data, but that's just an editorial comment. There's a data model there, but what you seem to be talking about pilots doing is doing data interchange. And there's some comments about, well, we're going to use CSV or something text editable compatible. But I would think if the big thing that's going to happen with the pilot implementations is data interchange, you need to be defining a data interchange format in addition to the data model. Otherwise, you don't know how to, how would you talk to a system that implemented that data model? Right. I mean, if it's just, if for example, you can say, well, it's just all those records are going to be in CSV, but if you grab a record, if you say, get me the record for the Alameda County Food Bank, and out comes, one record, I don't remember the name, one record from the entity table, and then a bunch of address records, and then some service records and program records. There's nothing to define how you identify which record is which, what order they come in, how they, well, actually, that's the basic thing. Clearly, how they relate to each other is through their IDs. But you see what I'm saying? Is it seems to me if we're doing data interchange, there needs to be a wire format definition in addition to a data definition.
Okay.
Now you just went silent for a minute. Could you start over?
Yeah, I'm going to chat what I think I just heard and see if I got this right. In addition to data interchange.
Whoa, you type fast.
Yeah, let me. I want to wordsmith this so that we make sure to post your comment, because I think some of the members of the work group have concerns similar to this, and I think Sophia has a way to address those concerns that I think they're starting to get. I'm not sure. I don't know if we've fully conveyed how the data interchange format of CSV can work, but we'll want to wordsmith this a little bit, but my initial response, based on what I understand, is that we recognize that I think Ohana uses JSON, iCarol uses XML. I'm not really sure what First 5 uses, but it could be something else. And as I understand it, the objective is not to pick one or the other, but to develop an interchange format that could be transformed into either direction. And so there's something technical about the implications of that I clearly am not grasping. And so, but it seems like it's a both and question rather than an either or question.
Right. It seems to me that I'm not an expert on JSON or any of these protocols, but if JSON inherently, says here's the kind of record I have, and here are all the fields, and here's the data, then that just sort of works. And who needs to do any better than that? That's one thing, but then there's this comment in two places where there's going to be this CSV format, and so those seem to be and those comments about, well, it should be editable by a spreadsheet or a text editor, I'm not sure why that's in this document, if this is just a data definition document.
This is a data definition document, right? This is like ideally this document would be saying, these are the principles behind all this. These are the considerations that we made. This is how it can be implemented, and these are actually the definitions.
Yeah, I mean I think that muddies the water.
Okay.
You have a very precise data definition, but then you have all this verbiage around it that's very vague and imprecise and contradictory to each other, and so I think it's confusing to someone like me who comes in and say, okay, I'm going to read a specification, and then there's this stuff that's very vague. So if we're not defining the wire protocol, then we shouldn't say, or the data storage, then we shouldn't say anything about it, right? Because Because it says CSV, but okay, where's the definition of the CSV files? You know, it doesn't. You know, so it doesn't. Anyway, enough.
All right. So I'm going to let me see if I can. I would like to be able to crystallize this into like a question that I could put to the work group.
Right.
Because I think your question probably will resonate with them, and I'd like to see what kind of response we get from Sophia, from the others on the work group. So maybe we can spend some time hashing it out. Let me see. You had shared a toolbox. I wonder if that gives us like a document that we could use together.
I don't know. I shared a toolbox.
It was like an app that you.
Yeah, I know. I forget what's in here.
Let me try this. Hold on. So there's a workgroup check-in notes document. I'm just going to pull this up into here. Are you seeing this Google Drive?
Yeah.
Okay. So let me know if you're able to edit it. I'm going to create a little section for 7, 18, 14. Like. I'm going to take out this.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is like my transcription of what you were saying, but let's see if we can edit it into a question for them.
It's about whether. Well, it says we are doing CSV.
And what the verbiage around the ambiguous verbiage that you're referring to, where was that? What text
So
was that?
there's like right in the beginning it says edited with a text editor, and somewhere later it says editable by a spreadsheet. And I put a comment in the document saying one doesn't imply the other. Which do you want? Right? I mean, you can have something editable by a spreadsheet that's total binary, right? I mean the docx format that Microsoft Excel generates, right? Is not editable by a text editor. On the other hand, you can certainly do things in a text editor that are not really readable by a.
And
so
is it possible that it could be that one could be like both and, like you could edit it in this way or edit it in that way?
Right, but then that begs the question: why is this talk about it at all? Right. I mean, right? It's the data, right? This is a data definition. And you're saying the pilots are probably going to do data interchange.
Right.
Why should there be anything in here on how the data is stored? Right.
As I understood it, Sophia was explicit in saying this is not about storage, this format.
No, well, maybe I misread it.
Like how you would take this format and then like prepare it for storage. I don't. What is the? What's the?
It says, right, this is under design principles. The data is stored in a machine-readable and writable format that can be created, dated, and deleted with a basic text editor. So you're talking about storage.
Yeah, I guess maybe she was saying, hold on, let me see. Storage. Right, she's like, this is meant to complement and not replace existing storage formats in use. Data is stored, right? Blah, blah, blah. There was a point where she says this is what Open Referral is not. Let me see. Maybe that's, I forget what that is.
Right, and then in the current human services data capabilities.
Mm-hmm.
the specification supports. Machine-readable format can be more directly into a relational database or viewed and edited using a spreadsheet.
You asked a question here, does the specification provide data? This seems like a sort of semantic question, whether she means that the data provided in the human services data specification are factual. I mean, I guess if someone was using the HSDS to provide data, then the data within there would just be factual, right?
Right.
Yeah, so that's...
It's just that was sort of the editing comment, I think.
So right, I think this is the sort of the gist. Your next comment about experimental result can be reproduced. Data served by an implementation must be available from multiple. I think she's meaning that the information that is in this format is verifiable, and different systems and applications can serve it up.
Yeah, I mean that's so. Just again, my high level comment is, you know, what is this specification of? Is it a specification of data format, or a specification of a system, or a specification of a federation of systems? Right? I mean, you could say things like the data provided by systems participating in this federation is factual. Right, but to say the data provided by this specification are factual, I just don't know what that means. Right? I mean, I mean, there seems to be that there's this, end result is that we'd have a federated or implemented system that would provide factual data stored in this specification, right? But that's not part of this specification. I just, does that make sense to you, or am I missing the point?
I think it makes sense to me, and I think there may be a little bit of like, we may just not be fully understanding like the way that Sophia expects this to be used. So
right.
She's referring to, I think she's said a couple of times that this is in some ways inspired by the general transit feed specification, which is the standard that enables transit agencies to publish their transit data to both Google Maps and other kinds of apps. And that's a relatively new specification, right? It's only a few years old. And we might find that there are assumptions made about how that works that don't actually apply to this context, in which case that's why we have the work group to go through and sort of like say, actually, this won't work for us after all. So.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what that specification covers, right? But if you're just specifying a data format, you would have specified the data format and not, you could have a, I mean, this document would probably make more sense to me if the appendix was the main part and all this other stuff was an appendix that talked about possible system implementations. Right? Then it would be more, then we say, okay, here's the data specification, here's how we're going to store things, or here's how we're going to represent things. And then systems that are going to store data in this representation ought to have this. We expect them to have these capabilities, right? That they're going to store factual data.
Right.
The data in multiple systems is going to be, not is going to be the same, right?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, it's just okay. I think I've said it. I think you understand what I'm.
Yeah, I think so.
And let's see, can I edit this? Yeah. So I'll go ahead and look at what you had here and edit it. I don't, unless you want me to do it while we're chatting.
No, you go ahead and edit it, and and we can also jump. We can, if you have any other questions, I'm happy to talk. I just heard from Dale, who apologized for missing this. But yeah, we could cut this short, work on sort of massaging this into a proper query for the work group, and yeah, let's see how this goes. See what they say.
All right, great.
Thanks, Mike. I appreciate it.
Are you still on the West Coast, or where are you?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm actually going to be in East Bay in a couple hours. I'll be there through the afternoon. I leave Monday night, and I'll be back in mid-September.
Okay, all right.
But I'm trying to make sure that we have at least one, if not two, people who are preparing to like figure out when the next meeting the call is among local stakeholders. You know, who'll be prepared to facilitate it and report out. So.
Yeah, as I said in my survey, I'm interested in participating. I don't know in what capacity, or, and I'm definitely not sure how much time I have to spend on it. The election season's coming up. I'm going to be involved in I am already involved in various things.
Yeah.
Sessions, and so.
Well.
But as far as doing design reviews and coming
yeah.
I'm certainly open to that.
Yeah, there may be a piece of this particular question that you might be able to apply specifically in a context, right? If Eden INR and/or First Five or whatever, if they're trying to figure out how to implement this in a way that would then be usable within their system or out of their system, that may be something that you could help advise them on.
Yeah. So your impression is Eden INR will basically take their existing system and do something that puts the data into the specification and then serve that out that way. Is that what you think they want to do?
That's what we're hoping for.
Mm-hmm. Right. So, there's lots of different ways they could do that, right?
That's right.
They could just put a layer in that translates their stuff to this format.
Yeah, I mean, their first problem right now is that they're in FileMaker Pro.
Uh-huh. Yeah. In 40 years of software development, systems don't die.
They might not die. They just become very decrepit and creaky versions of themselves.
The first system I worked on got used by the Labor Department to calculate the consumer price index. Mm-hmm. And our company was bought by another company, was bought eventually by NCR. And they were offering the government like free hardware and all this stuff to get off of our system. And the guy who controlled the manager was like 5 years from retirement, and he wasn't going to do anything. And so they had to keep supporting the old system,
right,
until it ran off the the general accounting. There's a list you're on. You got to promise to support things for 5 years. So they hadn't sunsetted our product in time, and so it had like 5 years to run, and that was enough time for the guy to retire. So. Yeah, I mean, I think one question is, they may be in a position where they're ready to actually take the jump into a new system, and it would be great if we could support them in doing that in a way that like helps their transition while also yields open data from their system, right? And some sort of value proposition for them in return. So. All right.
Take a look at what I did here. I tried to merge a few different thoughts in the second paragraph.
Okay. Do you want me to read it now and talk to you about it, or do you want me to?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll stop talking and I'll read.
Let's see. Or is this paragraph necessary given the above?
Yeah, probably, yeah, probably that's not necessary. I mean, the whole issue of text editor, I mean, that's
Right.
sort of irrelevant. But I think I could probably say this better. I'll let you edit.
Well, I mean, one way of saying things better is to get as brief as possible.
Yeah.
Right. So
get rid of the extra words.
Right. So there may be just a very simple question to ask here to that we can serve it up to them.
Yeah, I mean, the basic question is, if this document is a data storage definition document, then the primary part should be about the data definition, and anything about storage or anything else should be either not there or an appendix that's something like comments on implementation or expectation, something that's
right.
So
okay.
That's certainly in the overview you can say this is a data definition for systems that implement INR.
Right.
There's some expectation on but I don't know. I don't even the whole business about the data is going to be stored in a format that can be edited by text editor. I guess that's that just seems totally irrelevant to this. That's the more I think about it, the more it irks me because a system could store this data in Oracle, right? And then you say, oh no, we have to be able to edit in text editor. Well, there's many tools that would let you extract the data, edit in text editor, and put it back. So it's like.
Well, so what I hear from you is that it sounds to you like it's so obvious as to be redundant or even confusing, but maybe
what's confusing is the statement is the data is going to be stored in this format. But then you tell me this is not a data storage document. This is a data definition document. So, it's right that it shouldn't. My way of thinking, there shouldn't be any talkage of how you store this, right? I mean, if you look at the SQL standard, right, there's no talking about how things are stored, right? It's just it defines the query language and how things are, how that language is interpreted and what data you get back. Right, but there's the standard is silent on storage. Now,
right.
That's. I don't know what That's what I think this would be. Right? I mean, this is not a query language, but it's a data definition, which is
right.
Logical schema in the same. And if you want to talk about the physical schema, you should talk about the physical schema. But to talk about the actual binary that things are stored in, that's that would only be in the standard if the files that things are stored in have to be interchangeable. And I don't think that's the intention, is it?
I think it is.
So that Eden INR implements a system, I should be able to take their files that they have created, right? Not talk to them, take the file that's on the disk, and it's in a format that I can read it with a different implementation.
Yeah. I think that's the idea.
Well, then this document doesn't provide enough information to make that possible.
And that may be because we just haven't gotten to that point yet, right? Of that phase of work. So how are we doing here? I have you asking: is this a document for data storage or data definition? The business, the language around data in a format that can be edited by a text editor seems relevant or confusing. The document says this is not about data storage. This is not a data storage format, but then talks about editing store data or storing data.
It's about storing data, yeah.
There is a data model here defining terms, but pilots, the data model here defines terms, but pilots are focusing on interchange. I would think that if the big thing that's going to happen is interchange, then you have to define a data interchange format. I think we could probably delete this, right?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yep.
Can we delete this?
Yeah. Yeah. We can. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think.
Great. This seems simple and clear, right?
Right. Oops. Yeah. And that last paragraph is really, you know, I would just get. Yeah. I mean, that's a separate. This is a separate issue. I mean, I don't know.
Really?
Well, or perhaps current pendency name part, and there could be appendices with expectations on implementation.
Right. Okay. Great.
Yeah,
okay.
Good enough.
If this feels good enough to you, I will send it to the work group as the outcome of the assembly.
Right. And everyone else didn't have an opinion.
That's right. There was silent consensus from the rest of the room. All right, Mike. Thank you.
All right. Great.
All right. Bye.
Bye.